We are now continuing in Moshe's dialogue with God. And last week's Torah portion, we ended on a sort of a sour note that Moses complained bitterly to God, and seemingly justly so. Why, God, are you doing such terrible things to the Jewish people? You promised me you're going to let them out, and they're just making things worse. Apparently, Moshe was right, but if you think about who Moshe was talking to, he certainly was not right, because Moshe was speaking to God. And God, besides creating him, God has a whole plan, and God told Moses the plan. And Moses was even convinced, and even convinced the Jewish people that this thing was going to work. And all of a sudden, as soon as the Jewish people started to complain, so Moses wanted to get out of it. Okay, but on the other hand, you have to look at it the other way. And that's what we're going to talk about. Moses really wanted to get the Jewish people out. And he really thought that he believed that God was going to give him the power, but he thought that he just would disappoint God, that he would be appointed and that God would give him the power, but he wouldn't misuse the power. I mean, afterwards, after all, God is doing this whole thing of taking the Jews out of Egypt by means of people. He's not doing it himself. God said, I'm going to do the miracles, good, but you, Moses, have to go into Paro, and Paro has to agree. That's the rules of the game. Why God set it up this way? That's the reason he set the whole world up this way. He set the whole world up in such a way that God wants us to work. That's why he created man. Now the Jewish people are put into Egypt, as this is only fulfilling what God promised to Abraham. He's told Abraham that that's the way it's going to be. Why God decides this, I don't know. And also Moses doesn't know, and because Moses doesn't know, so Moses is, so to speak, he's questioning God. And Moses has every right to question God. Moses is appointed the shepherd of all the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are suffering. So what does God want Moses to do? Just say, okay, let them suffer. I don't care. If you want the Jewish people to suffer, God, so that's your business, but don't make me the shepherd over them. A shepherd has to care for his flock. I'm just doing my job. So this is God's answer to Moses. This is not God's answer to Moses. Vayadaber Elokim el Moshe. 1 second, 1 minute. Yeah. Vayadaber Elokim el Moshe. And God spoke to Moses. And God spoke to Moses. And he said, I am God. Okay, here we have two interesting names of God. He starts off saying this name, and we'll say the name, but usually don't say it, Elohim. And it ends up by saying, I am Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the essence name of God. This name of God, if you know a little bit about Hebrew grammar, so this is plural. Elohim means, so to speak, gods. That's in the 10 Commandments. You shouldn't have any other gods. So this is God. So this is the aspect of God that he can, divide himself. In other words, make all this division and apparent multitude in the world, Elohim. That's the name God used to create the world. That's the aspect of God. Like I said, every name of God is a different aspect of God. So this aspect of God is Elohim. And that's the aspect of severity, how God can apparently divide himself and articulate himself and express something other than his essence. Now, God's essence is mercy. That's this name of God is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. That's God's name of mercy. And this name of Elohim, so to speak, seems to be something other than God's mercy. This is an unusual aspect of God. And Chassidut explains these ideas of Kabbalah about how God created the world. These ideas from Yitzhak Luria, that God created the world by hiding over his light. In the Bible, it's called God speaking. It seems that God is making something outside of himself. And that's this aspect of Elohim. So that's what it says. Vayedaber Elohim, let's look at Rashi. El Moshe, Daber ito mishpat, that God is speaking to him in a severe way, like a severe judgment. Al Shehiksha, because Moses asked Velomer and said, Lama harayot lama zeh, in the previous Torah portion, like I just told you, why are you making the Jews suffer? God spoke severely to Moses because Moses asked this question. And Vayomer 11, God said to him, Ani Hashem, I am God. Don't you understand? I am Ani Hashem, I am God. This aspect, this name of God, like we said, is mercy, but it also implies that God will pay back whatever he promises. Ne'eman l'shalem schar, I'm going to give back, going to give a good reward. Le'mehalchim l'fanai, to those people who go before me. I didn't send you for no reason. I'm sending you in order to do what I told you, and also what I told to the forefathers. Harishonim, I promised Abraham that I was going to take them out of Egypt. I promised that they were going to be slaves. I promised them the land of Egypt. We'll see, this continues. I promised Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov that I'm going to give them the land of, not Egypt, I'm going to give them the land of Israel. I'm going to take them out of Egypt. I'm going to give them Israel. I promised. And don't worry, I'm going to keep my promise. And I'm going to keep my promise through you. In this language, when he says, Ani Hashem, this name of God, Matzino, we find, Shehun Nidrash B'kama Makomos, a lot of places, Ani Hashem Ne'eman, I am God, and I am faithful to do what I say, to pay back. Yeshu Omar Eitzel Onish, also when it says, I'll pay punishments. I'll give my punishment. I am God. Kagon, like it says, V'chilalta Shem Elokecha Ani Hashem. It said, don't defile my name. I will punish you because I am God. Also, when it says about doing the commandments, like it says, Shemartem mitzvah v'zisamotam, by mitzvahs, tzitzis, do watch my commandments and do them. I am God. This name is the name that God said that I make promises and I keep them. Here's the OrHaChaim, a lot of beautiful explanations here, but let's just take one of the shorter ones because we haven't got time to explain, to learn all these. Here it says, here, also this corresponds to this is speaking to the Jewish people, like what God said, Ashreichem et Tzadikim, happy are, and there's these two names. Why does it use these two names? Vayedaber Elohim, which is severity, and Yud Ke Vav Ke, which is God's mercy. Why? Because this hints at the Jewish people, like it says that happy are the righteous Jews, that they transform severity to mercy. That's what it says, Vayedaber Elohim Vayomer. First of all, God spoke with the aspect of severity. This is that you see that my apparent mercy, which is the name of Yud Ke Vav Ke, and from this, Moses decided on his own mind that Moshe, that under Moses understood that God was deciding to do bad to Paro, and that God's mercy would agree to this. And he understood Gezar Din, and that he was going to do good to the Jews, even through his aspect of severity. And this strengthened Moses's attitude. What is Moses saying? God is telling me that he has the aspect of severity, and he has the aspect of mercy, and that he's going to use them in a way that I can also understand. That's why he's speaking to me. So first of all, the name Elohim, you see this name Elohim? Well, I promised you I'm going to use it against Paro. I'm going to use it against Paro. I'm going to send them the plagues. and the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is mercy, I'm going to use this for the Jewish people to take them out. And this all depends on you, Moses, that you're the one that's going to transform this. Okay, here's a sort of a long one. The OrHaChaim says, this also shows the unification of two God's names, Elohim and Avaya. This shows on the unity of Hashem, that also the apparent division of God is also one. This is the secret of God, which he reveals to his prophets. Those are the faithful of his house. That's also what the Sefer says. I am Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, I'm Makayim Metziut. I sustain and create the whole entire world. Not only do I create the world, but I also sustain the world. And there's no existence except for me and what I give to the world. Like it says, Ata Machayet Kulam, like it says, you, God, you enliven the world. And also it explains, you mehavet all over, you create the world all the time. And therefore, don't worry, nothing can go outside of my will. That's what God said. I am God, nothing is outside of my will. Let's do the Kli Yakar. It's very beautiful. It's a little bit long, but it's beautiful. God spoke all these words to Moses and he said, I am God. Two different names, Elohim, severity, and Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is mercy. Okay, Vayomer a love. It says, and God spoke a love to him. I am God. Okay, it doesn't have to say it. It could say Vayadaber el Moshe Ani Hashem. What does it have to say again? God spoke to Moses, Vayomer a love, and he said to him. I already said he spoke to him. What does he have to say again? And he said to him. These words, Vayomer a love, are extra. So it seems to me like this. The rabbis say, why is Moses' name Moshe? Moshe, it says because he was drawn out of the water. Moshe, miyamai mishisiu. So why wasn't he called Masui? Why wasn't he called lifted up? He was drawn out of the water. So it should be called Masui, like a burden, like you lift something up. Because Moshe means right now. Moshe, he's lifting up now. It says the Spirit of God is speaking, was speaking when she gave him the name. And so the Spirit of God was speaking through her to call him Moshe. In other words, what does it mean? That he lifts up and he draws out. Because he was the one, Moses is the one who's going to draw the Jewish people from the exile, from what's called these turbulent waters of the exile, the flood waters of the exile. So if Moshe would have just thought about his name, so he would have understood that really, that by means of him, the Jewish people are going to be redeemed. And he wouldn't have complained, saying to God, why did you send me? Why are you doing bad to the Jewish people? But on one side, we can understand why Moshe did this. We can learn zechut al Moshe, that he was just checking himself out. For Ra'ah, and he saw, et atzmo kaved peh, he saw that nevertheless, after everything, he still had a big speech impediment. The lashon, his mouth and his tongue just didn't work properly. Our Alkan, therefore, Chashabi thought, true, God is with him and God will help, but God wants him to do something. I mean, God is not doing it all himself. So if God wants it to go through me, he was afraid that he was going to mess up. He was afraid that he would get power and that he would misuse it. And we see that there are cases like this. I mean, the case we keep going back to all the time is the one of Yerovam ben Nevat. The Yerovam ben Nevat, this is after King Solomon died in the first temple, and Yerovam ben Nevat was a tremendously holy, spiritual, talented, genius person, and amazing powers of leadership and charisma. And God personally chose him to be the leader of the 10 tribes. And as soon as he became the leader of the 10 tribes, he went berserk. He made golden calves and he let everybody do sins. Just the man went out of his mind. So Moses thought, listen, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe everybody has their own faults, and maybe my faults will drag me down. Therefore, he said, therefore, he spoke hard to God. That's the God's aspect of severity. And God spoke to Moses saying, don't worry about it. You should get punished now because you didn't check your name. Good, you checked your personality. You've got a speech impediment, good. But your name that was given to you is Moshe. You should have understood that from your name that you're the one that's going to pull out the Jews. Moshe means to draw them out, lift them up and draw them out of the exile. And therefore, Moshe should not have complained to God. But because, on the other hand, Moses, because of himself, as God said, I'm very strict with you. I'm really angry at you that you asked. But because of Moses' self, so God got filled with mercy. And he said to him nice words. Don't worry about it. I understand you have a speech impediment. It's going to be, you're not the one to take the Jews out of Egypt. But don't worry about it, since that you have a hard language. So therefore, I'll give you the aspect of mercy, and I'll send Aaron with you, and Aaron will be able to speak with you. Okay, so God is now speaking to Moses, and he was saying, Moses, God, the severe aspect of God is speaking to Moses and says, don't worry about it. I am God, I am very merciful. And I appeared to Avraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov in the name El Shaddai. But my name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, I did not make known to them. Rashi says, I appeared to the Avos, the forefathers. I promised them all sorts of promises, and I promised them all in the name of El Shaddai. But I did not make known to them my name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. I didn't make them know. What does it mean? I didn't show them my true aspect. My true aspect is that I keep all my promises, and this I did not keep them. I did not show them. Therefore, that's my name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, that I keep all the promises that I make, because I promised them all a lot of things, and I did not come across. Sophrano says that I appeared to the prophets in the name of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when they got prophecy in the name El Shaddai. This shows me that I can provide everything. That's when I said that's El Shaddai, means it's enough. I can give everything. I have enough power to give everything. That's what it said in Parshas Lech Lecha, when God said to Abraham to circumcise himself. But nevertheless, I did not show them the name El Shaddai. This, I'm sorry. I only was known to them in the name El Shaddai, but my name, Bishmi, in my name, Lo Nodati Lehem, I didn't show them Ba'oto Amara, Velo Shaniti, in that same vision that I said, I didn't change because of them any nature, because my nature never stops. Therefore, I showed to them only my severity. Therefore, I should now let you know something that I didn't show to them, in order that I can keep you as a nation. In other words, I didn't let Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov I didn't let them know that their offspring are going to be eternal. So then I'm going to show to you that you're going to be for a nation, because Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were just individuals. Therefore, that's the reason why I'm now going to redeem all of the Jewish people. That's one reason. God said, in other words, I made this promise, making this promise to you. Dalit, and also I kept my covenant with them to give them, I stood up my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land where they dwelled, of their dwelling which they lived in. Rashi says, also when I did appear to them in the name El Shaddai, I made my covenant between me and between them, and I swore that I'm going to give them the land of Israel. In Avram, by the circumcision, I said, I am the Hashem, v'natati l'cha zaracha, I gave to you and your seed after you the land of the place where you lived. To Yitzchak, I promised, and I said, l'chol zaracha atain as artzot ha'ela, these land where you lived, and I'll keep my covenant and my oath, Shishpati Avram, that I gave to Abraham. And this oath that he gave to Avram and El Shaddai. I also said to Yaakov, I am El Shaddai, pray over you, you should be fruitful and multiply, and you're going to go to this land that I showed you. I promised all three of them I'm going to give them the land. And they suffered and they worked hard for me. And I didn't give it to them. They all died and they didn't see the land of Israel being given to their children. That was the Safarno, right? Avadim from Safarno. V'gam ani shamati, and I heard the cries of the Jewish people that Mitzrayim is how do you say, making them work hard, and I will now remember my covenant. Rashi says, and also I made this covenant with them. Now I have to keep it. Therefore, I have now heard the cries of the Jewish people, and I'm going to I remember this covenant that I made with them, this agreement, the agreement that I made with Abraham in the covenant between the pieces. I said this to him, the nation that's going to serve you, I will judge them. I made them. Safarno says v'gam, and also implying that here's a second reason. The first reason is that God said, where are we? Just 1 second. Here. The first reason is that I showed my essence to them, but I didn't show them. I showed my nature to them, El Shaddai, but I didn't really keep my promises. I made these promises, and I didn't show them my true nature, namely that I want the Jewish people to be eternal. I did not show it to them, to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and to you I'm going to show it. Reason number one. Reason number two. Siba Shani's, the second reason to redeem them is the covenant that I made with Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. The first one is I did not show them my true nature. And now I'm going to show you my true nature to make you an eternal nation. Number two, I made a covenant. I promised. Now I have to keep my promise that I made with them. The Gam, and also, and here's the third reason, says God, and Shamati es nakas ben Israel. I heard the cries of the Jewish people that Egypt is enslaving them, and I will remember my covenant. Let's look at this, Safarno Odpam. And this is the third reason to redeem them, is that I've heard the suffering of the Jewish people, and that it's very difficult to them. And so therefore now you are fit that I should do the second reason, keep my covenant. Like it said, I saw that the Jewish people are suffering. So I remember the second reason, I remember my covenant. Said Rashi, I made this covenant, now I have to keep it. Therefore, I am listening to the Jewish people, the cries of the Jewish people. That's what the Safarno just said. And that covenant that I made with Abraham, that you said the nation that enslaves you, I'm going to punish them for it. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to do what I promised. Okay, Lochem, therefore, Amor Leben Israel. And here we're going to have the four languages of redemption. That's the reason we drink the 4 cups of wine on Passover. And there's going to be a 5th language. That's the language of the cup of Elijah the prophet. That's going to be for the future redemption. So let's have a look. Therefore, say to the Jewish people, I am God. First language, I will take you out from under the suffering of Egypt. Hotzeti. Second language, Vitzalti. And I will save you from servitude. Hitzalti, second language of redemption. Vigoalti, third language of redemption. Goalti, and I will redeem you with a stretched out arm. God says, Wishfatim Gadolim, and with big judgments. That's 3 so far. Hotzeti, Hitzalti, and Goalti. Let's just go to the fifth and we'll come back. V'lakachti, that's the fourth language. And I will take you to me for a people, and I will be for you for a God. Then you'll know that I am God, your God, that took you from under the suffering of Egypt. That's the four languages of redemption, according to the spot. And there's a fifth language. This fifth language is referring to the future redemption. Haveti etchem, and I will bring you Ela Eretz, to the land, Asher Nasati et Yadi, that I raised my hand, I made an oath, Lateto to give it to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and I will give it to you, Morashah, as an inheritance, Ani Hashem, I am God. Pretty good. Vayidaber Moshe el Bnei Yisrael, and Moshe spoke to the Jewish people, V'lo shamu Moshe, but they were not able to listen to Moshe. Vayidaber el Moshe mikotzer ruach me'avodah kasha, because of the hard spirit and difficult work. So some say that mikotzer ruach means because they didn't have enough, they didn't have any spirituality in Egypt. They were totally working every day for looking around for straw, making bricks. And because of the hard work, they couldn't listen to Moshe. Rashi says they didn't listen to Moshe. Lo kiblu tanchumim. They were not comforted by Moses' words. Why? Mikotzer ruach. Because kol mishu meitzer rucho v'nishmato katzara. Anyone that is anyone who is, how do you say, the heart of that is pained in his soul, his breathing is short, and he's not able to take deep breaths. Right? A person is suffering. He doesn't take deep. They say sometimes when a person is in distress, take a deep breath, because people don't take deep breaths. That's what it means. They were kotzer ruach. They were always apprehensive and worried and suffering. It says, okay, the proof is brought to this, what it means, kotzer ruach. Also, I will keep my The rabbis say this refers to God. What does it mean? Kotzer ruach, that God had kotzer ruach. What do you mean God was kotzer ruach? The God got angry, upset. Why? What did God get upset? Because Moshe said, Lama harayota, at the end of last week's Torah portion, Moses said to God, why are you making the Jewish people suffer? You told me I was going to take them out of Egypt, and since I went to them, things only got worse. Omer lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God said back to Moses, Chaval al da'avdin, woe, it's too bad on those that are gone, and those Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they're not gone, v'lo mishtachim, and they're not present anymore. Yesh li litonen, God said, I now am really regretting and mourning the mitat avot, on the death of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Harba pamim, a lot of times, nigleti alayam, I revealed myself to them as El Shaddai. V'lo omri, and they never asked me what my name is. And you immediately, by the burning bush, you said, what is your name? Right? Ma omar alayam. What the Jewish people ask what your name is, what should I say to them? Also, I did, I'm going to keep my promise. When Abraham requested to bury Sarah, he couldn't find any ground to bury her until he had to buy it with a lot of money. Also, Yitzchak, he said, they complained about the wells that he dug. And also Yaakov, it says that he bought a plot of land to put his tents. Below your hair, they should have said, why do I have to work hard? Why do I have to, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they worked so hard, and all they got was troubles. And you're saying, why did I make trouble for Hariosa? Why am I making trouble for the Jews? says that Rashi, I don't exactly agree with this in a lot of different ways. First of all, it doesn't say Shmi Hashem Lo Sha'alti. It doesn't say that Abraham, Isaac, because they didn't ask my name. It says Lo Hodati Lem. I just didn't make known to them. If you want to say no, that listen, I didn't let Abraham know my name at all, but that's not so. And by Abraham, God said, Ani Hashem. God did make his name known to Abraham, Yud Ke Vav Ke. Asher would say Timor Chazdim. And also, how can and how does it work out that it continues with the Lo Somech Lakan, Ani Shamati, that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I didn't keep the promises with them, and they didn't complain, and now I hear the cries of the Jewish people. The whole thing doesn't fit in together, says Rashi. Therefore, I say, therefore, I say, in order the simple meaning is that what? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I did not make my name known to them, and they did not complain. And now, right, now with you, you're starting to complain, right? You're starting to complain. It's not proper that you complain, but I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. That's what the other people say. The Jewish people, Moses, I said, Moses, don't worry about it. Everything is going to be okay. The ones that had Kotzer Ruach is not God had Kotzer Ruach, that God was angry at Moses because the Jewish people had Kotzer Ruach because they were suffering. That works out together, right? They couldn't. Moses came and he spoke to the Jewish people, told them the message that God wanted, and he couldn't. And the people couldn't listen. Moses spoke, God spoke to Moses and said, go speak to Paro, the king of Egypt, and he should send the Jewish people out. Okay, Moses? So, I put so much energy into this. Come on, Moses, do what I say, all right? He already convinced Moses by the burning bush. God spoke to him for 7 days, and finally Moses agreed, and God gave him his names, and God gave him his powers, he gave him his promises. He said, Aaron is going to go with you, don't worry about it. But finally, after everything, and he says for him, God, hey, in Bnei Yisrael, lo yishmu alai. The Jewish people aren't going to listen to me. God, you're making a mistake. I'm going to go and talk to them, I'm going to stammer and stutter. They're not going to listen to me. Right? The Jewish people, you see, they didn't listen to me. Right? You see that they have Kotzer Ruach. It says, V'lo Yishma. What does it say here? V'lo Yishma Moshe. God went to the Jews again, and they couldn't listen to him because of their difficulties that we're in. Moses promised them, and at first they listened, and now everything got bad. And they said, we're not listening to you anymore, Moses. Things are just getting worse. Every time we listen to you, things get worse. And God says, don't pay any attention to that. Go and talk to Paro. Paro will let him out. And Moses said, listen, the Jewish people didn't listen to me. How is Paro going to listen to me? How is Paro going to hear me? And I'm hard of speech. I can't speak properly. So God spoke to Moses and Aaron, and he commanded them to the Jewish people and to Paro Melech Mitzrayim to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. That's where it ends. That's where today's message ends. Moses said, I can't speak very well. And God said, okay, I'll take Aaron with you. Don't worry about it. Like I said before, Aaron's going to do the talking. And he commanded Tziva Aleim Lahanigam Benachas, and he commanded them to deal with the Jewish people easily. And they're going to make a lot of trouble, understandably. They've been in exile working hard for like a long time. And so deal with the Jewish people easily, like I do, God says, and go and speak to Paro, the king of Egypt. He commanded them to chalak lo kavod b'divrayim, to give Paro proper honor. That's the midrash. Paro, the king of Egypt, he's the king of Egypt. The simple meaning is that he commanded them about the Jewish people and about their job to go to Paro. and to speak and command. And what is it going to be? We're going to see afterwards how they're supposed to speak to Moshe and what Moshe and Aaron are supposed to say. But now we're going to talk about tomorrow we're going to learn about the genealogy of Moses, where Moses, whose parents were, and etc., to teach how Moses was born in Aaron and and who are their relatives, who are they related to. That's what we're going to learn tomorrow. So here we see the back and forth between God and Moses. Moses is afraid to go. He's afraid that maybe he's going to be insufficient, and God keeps pumping up his trust in himself and his motivation to go and take the Jewish people out of Egypt. And if we remember, we learned last time that was the reason that God appeared in the burning bush to Moses, because God said that Moses, a burning bush doesn't have any power, any abilities, and that's what I want. I want somebody like you. And that's also what I'm going to give the mountain, the Torah, Mount Sinai, because it's the lowest of mountains. And that's what I like, somebody that's humble, just like you. Go take the Jews out of Egypt. Everything's going to be okay. As we see, we're going to see, God willing, tomorrow. And of course, everything did come out okay as far as going out of Egypt, getting out of Egypt. But what happened after they got out of Egypt is not so okay. And we'll learn about that also, God willing. Have a good day with Mashiach. And I'll see you at 8:15 tomorrow.